Welcome to Rauta. This time it's one of the bigger artists this year, at least in terms of Rauta to happen here. Kerry King from Hell I Rise debut album, which is of course known for being the ex-Slayer guitarist. Now when Slayer pretty much in 2019 or so decided to go it's goner, that's the last time I saw them live as well as their farewell gig in Helsinki. Well, that's exactly the same year when Kerry King decided, it seems, like let's start a new band. And what he did was, in essence, recruit a bunch of veterans from the American scene to join his venture to keep the Slayer legacy going on. Now, the label Reigning Phoenix Productions, Records, whatever it is, officially called, Reigning Phoenix, let's call it that, decided to send me a LP of the album for review. Thank you for them for that. And this one comes with a dark cover, which some people have criticized for, it's just one of those annoying AI generated cover. Don't know about that. I don't find it ugly or anything like that, but actually very fitting. And Kerry King logo still keeps the legacy going on. So fuck you Christians out there, and with your God and all, these logos says it all better than anything with KK in the middle. Now, even though Kerry King, the band, goes on with the very man's name and all, like said, this is no solo project with session members, but some real members. And now this comes with a very, very beautiful gatefold cover. I hope to show it to you here. As you can see, quite a demonic take on the cover. So beautiful gatefold indeed, not just your basic stuff. And then we of course have the inlay with the lyrics and liner notes. And here we have the important part. Kerry King as the guitar, as the main man. Paul Bostaph, ex-Slayer and various other bands as the drummer. So very fitting here to keep this legacy going on. Kyle Sanders, probably the least known but still important part of the band, from Hell Yeah, and Phil Demmel from Violence and Machine Head, etc. And Mar Oseguera from Death Angel. So a lot of veteran miles here, so to say. And now this version I got here for review, and my personal collection for that matter, comes with a nice orange marble design. So beautiful, yet a little bit maybe exotic colorways to go with the physical product. This is how it looks. So far, so good. But what about the music? Can it really reclaim the legacy? Now, my initial spin with the album when I got the digital promo already a few months back, I was like, okay, it sounds very much like Kerry King going on with Slayer and all, but is it really that good? And I was like, maybe it is, but I'm gonna give it more spins and all that stuff. And then it took a while before the physical product arrived here, and I was like, okay, now give it a proper run, a few spins more, let it kind of like seep into my brain and figure out what it is. And now I can safely say, yeah, it's a really good album and one of the better ones for me anyway in 2024. But how does it compare to Slayer? That's the big question, obviously. But before that, we go through quickly the whole thing here. So 13 tracks, 46 minutes. That sounds quite a lot in nowadays standards where everybody's pushing their 6-minute songs and you can barely fit maybe 6 songs on a 40-minute of an album. This kind of proves the other way. You don't need trash songs to go for 6-7 minutes. You go out and in quickly. That means there are songs which last less than 2 minutes. A couple of them, I'll buy the instrumental intro here. But also in general, I mean, you have these 2-minute, 3-minute tracks, which is kind of a very, very fitting for thrash metal. Everybody who knows their Slayer back and forth, like I pretend I do, know that most of the good songs are exactly like that. Anything from 2 to 4 minutes and you're good to go. Now, there are lengthier songs on Slayer catalog, that's given, and some very, very good ones. But most of them, well, you don't really need to step out of your comfort zone in order to deliver the blows. But not only this is old school trash, like keeping the Slayer legacy going on, there is even some punkier parts. For example, let me explain. Two Fists listen to those riffs and say it's not really punk, because that it is. And I find it very, very fascinating because I'm actually very, very much liking that, even though I'm not a punkhead myself. But I mean, it kind of shows that these guys grew up with that stuff. So it's almost like a tribute, in a way, to something that happened 40, 50 years ago. So it's a great thing. And then there are also really catchy parts, both vocals and riffs. So the song Toxic, for example. I mean, even if it's not the biggest mosh part out there, you kind of get the feeling, yeah, there's a lot of anger behind it. Toxic government, toxic hypocrites. Those, words start kind of spinning in your head, living their own life. And that's when you find out this is exactly what you call banger. I mean, there's a difference between songs that are quite easy and nice to listen to, but you wouldn't really call them a hit song. And then there are songs like that. You start remembering the name rather instantly after a couple of spins maybe, because the song's kind of the lyrics kind of seep into your brain, and then it kind of goes with the riff and you're like, yeah, this is exactly what you'll be waiting for, yearning for. Now, comparing the Slayer is of course complicated because you don't have more than half a Slayer Legacy lineup. Now, that's more than enough in many cases, but there are people who criticize that Bostaph ain't no Lombardo. That's given. These guys are different in terms of drummer, and me being a big Lombardo fan could be like taking this as an insult. But come on, I lived through the phases when Bostaph was doing his work, and I think he's a good drummer. Maybe not Lombardo level of drummer, but then again, who the hell is really? And when it comes to the guitar work in general, I mean, Demel's guitar work is like very much, working nicely hand in hand with whatever Kerry King does. I mean, there are no parts or phases or whatever you feel like, what is this riff doing here? Surely there are some parts where it doesn't really sound like Slayer, but then again, we're not talking about Slayer album here in the first place. We're talking about the Kerry King half of Slayer, if that makes sense. And in that sense, we have to understand, surely it keeps the legacy going on, but it's still a different band. For example, there is no Tom Araya, which then again might be a little bit of a shock when you listen to it the first time, because let's be honest about it. Mark Ozoguera is a good vocalist. I think he's one of the better thrash metal vocalists there. And while there are lots of parts where you feel like you're listening to Tom Araya, of course his voice is different. I mean, this is a human instrument we're talking about. So it sounds different. But once you kind of get used to it, the more Tom Araya-like it starts to sound like. That can be both of a good and a bad thing. Bad in the sense that if you wanted some different, you didn't get it that different. Good, that if you wanted to sound it more like Slayer, yeah, you kind of got it. So he's a good vocalist, of course, with his background and all. So yeah, but then again, not that far away. So I think this is a very, very good lineup. I don't know if you could really get much better at lineup, really. I mean, even if you could say replace Demel with some Exodus guys, for example, because that's what Slayer had, would it really sound better? Probably not. Would it sound different? Possibly. But does it matter? I mean, like I said, I like to think that Kerry King's solo band, if you can call it that, is like a smaller sibling to Slayer. So surely they have a lot of same DNA, that's given. But they also need to be seen and heard as a different set of bands. So in my opinion, I wouldn't mind if Kerry King later on went to a little bit different than Slayer. And it's a lot to be said coming from a fan who thinks Slayer is the best band ever. So I am positively surprised. Maybe my first spin really didn't put me on an instant crush. Like, you know what I'm talking about, I hope. That sometimes you hear an album for the very first time and you're in love. You're deeply in love, madly in love, and then there's nothing else you can really talk about. I was more like, okay, sounded pretty good. And the later spin's more like, yeah, it's definitely good, worth a couple of thumbs. So in my opinion, this is really, really a good album. And I'm happy to own it right now. And I'm going to go back to this. That's kind of a given. And that's something that I cannot say about most albums in the world. Why so? Because there's lots of mediocrity. Lots of like, okay, kind of a decent, but not the great stuff. And then there are albums you want to go back to. So this is one of those albums I want to go back to. And now I'm looking forward to see Kerry King play live someplace. I know they had played a couple of shows in Finland by the time this review is out and all, but I couldn't make it. So hopefully next time, somewhere, not necessarily in Finland, I get to see them. And even more so, I hope that I get to pick Kerry King about his music, past and present, on Rauta sometimes. Let's keep the thumbs up for that. And meanwhile, off you go. Give it a listen. Don't listen to the naysayers, to the negative Joes and Janets who are like, okay, it's not, you're not gonna like it. Trash metal is so much gone. Fuck that shit. Trash metal is here, and this is a very vital part of it. This is a good album. So thank you for the label sending me, and even more, thank you Kerry King and the rest of the crew for making this album. Let's keep the legacy, Slayer legacy alive and enjoy the good music. So off you go. Check it out and let me know what you think about it. Bye bye.